The sun had barely risen over Chicago when Maya Thompson hurried down the stairs, wearing a red t-shirt and jeans. Today was her first day at a new school, and she felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. The city seemed to have a special glow for her that morning. "Are you ready for today, my star?" her father, the school principal, asked as he prepared breakfast. He looked at her with pride, realizing how quickly she was growing up. "Yes, Dad. I can't wait to meet everyone and see what the classes are like here," Maya replied, grabbing an apple and a piece of toast. Mr. Thompson was well respected in the community and dedicated to the school, but he knew that being the principal's daughter could mean extra pressure for Maya. He gave her an encouraging smile. "Don't worry, Maya. Just be yourself and people will like you," he said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "And if you need anything, I'll be nearby." Maya nodded, smiling. "Thanks, Dad. I'll do my best." Later, as she walked through the school hallway, Maya took in everything around her. The walls were decorated with student artwork, posters of clubs and events. Some curious glances turned her way, but she held her head high, determined to make friends and fit in. Finally, she entered her history class and found a seat by the window. Within minutes, the door swung open, and the history teacher walked in. It was David Harris, a tall man with a serious expression and firm gestures. He surveyed the students without smiling, and after a few moments, said in a deep voice, "Good morning, class. I'm Mr. Harris. I hope you're prepared to study seriously, because I don't tolerate laziness." The classroom fell silent. Maya watched the teacher intently, intrigued by his demeanor. He seemed demanding and, in a way, rigid. When he called the roll, she heard her name. "Maya Thompson," he said, looking at her. She nodded. "Present, sir." He stared at her for a few seconds before moving on. She didn't understand that look, but shrugged it off. The next morning, Maya arrived for history class feeling a bit anxious. After the first day, she had heard some comments about Mr. Harris and his rigorous teaching style. It was clear he expected a lot from his students, which made her alert, but also determined to show her best self. When Harris entered the classroom, the chatter faded away. He set his briefcase on the desk, adjusted his glasses, and started the lesson without any friendly introduction. "Today we're going to start a series of lessons on the history of civil rights in the United States," he said in a serious tone. "Many of you think you know about this, but we're going to explore a lesser-known side." Maya straightened up in her chair, interested in the topic. She knew how important this subject was, both historically and for her own identity. Mr. Harris continued, outlining the timeline of slavery and the struggle for civil rights, until he paused and scanned the classroom with his eyes. It seemed as though he was assessing them, trying to gauge who truly understood what he was saying. "The truth is, certain communities," he said with a hint of disdain, "prefer to play the victim instead of contributing to societal progress." Maya felt a slight discomfort, as if that remark was aimed directly at her. Several students quickly glanced her way, and she sensed the weight of the silence. She took a deep breath and raised her hand, trying to remain calm. "Mr. Harris, I believe that the history of civil rights shows us the opposite. There were decades of struggle and resistance to secure basic rights. I don't think it's a matter of playing victim." Harris frowned, demonstrating contained irritation. He crossed his arms and looked at her with a challenging expression. "Interesting point of view, Miss Thompson," he replied in a biting tone. "But it's easy to think that way when you live in a reality that only allows you to see one side of the coin. Many of the achievements we study here were, in fact, driven by minority interests, not a genuine desire for inclusion." Maya shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with his response. She realized the conversation was starting to take a more personal turn. "I disagree, sir. I believe these achievements were for everyone and changed many lives. The civil rights struggle was to ensure that everyone was treated with equality and respect." Harris raised an eyebrow, looking at her with an expression of contempt. It's natural for you to think that. But I'm here to teach history, not to discuss narratives. I expect everyone here to understand that, in life, there's no room for sentimentality. The silence in the room was thick. Maya felt her face heat up, but she kept her head held high, despite the gazes of her classmates. The professor's words still echoed in her mind, leaving her with a mix of humiliation and indignation. In the following week, the atmosphere in history class remained tense whenever Mr. Harris and Maya locked eyes. Harris had noticed Maya's resistance to his opinions and, in a way, seemed to be looking for new ways to challenge her. That morning, he started the class by writing on the board, "Civil Rights Movement, Advances and Regressions." After a brief introduction to the topic, he began asking questions to the class. Who can tell me how the civil rights movement really impacted our society? He glanced at the students, and inevitably, his gaze landed on Maya. Maya? Since you seem so interested in the subject, would you like to share your thoughts? Feeling her classmates' eyes on her, Maya took a deep breath and replied confidently. The civil rights movement was essential for bringing justice and equality. People like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and so many others sacrificed their lives so future generations could live with dignity and respect. Harris offered a slight smile, but his expression was one of disdain. That's what history books like to paint. But what about the consequences for the rest of society? Who talks about the negative economic impact on workers who, for decades, had to adapt to the new regulations and policies created to benefit specific groups? Maya looked at him, bewildered. Sir, the changes were made to correct historical injustices. It wasn't an easy process, but it was necessary for everyone to have equal rights. Harris let out a short, dry laugh. You really think equality is possible, Maya? That these corrections only benefited and didn't create new problems? Some communities continue to believe they deserve special treatment because they suffered in the past. The room was dead silent. Maya felt a wave of indignation, but she tried to remain calm. With all due respect, sir, this way of thinking undermines all the struggle and pain many went through. It's not about special treatment, it's about justice. Harris crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow, clearly irritated by her rebuttal. I see you're an idealist, Miss Thompson. Perhaps reality will show you that things aren't as simple as they seem. Maya fell silent, her face burning. She felt humiliated and disrespected. Satisfied with having the last word, Harris turned to the class and continued his lecture as if nothing had happened. After class, several classmates approached her, still shocked by what they had witnessed. Are you okay, Maya? Asked Carla, a girl sitting next to her. Maya nodded, but her eyes were watery. Yeah. I just didn't expect him to be so cruel. Maya left the classroom with a heavy heart. Harris's words echoed in her mind, mixed with the shock and humiliation she felt from being ridiculed in front of her peers. As she walked through the hallways, she tried to hold back tears, but the tightness in her chest grew stronger. As she reached the courtyard, Carla, her classmate who had been by her side during class, caught up with her. Maya, wait. Carla placed her hand on Maya's shoulder, her voice filled with concern. Are you okay? Maya looked at Carla and forced a smile, but her eyes were still red. I'm fine, just, that was hard to hear. Does he really think my opinion is less important just because of who I am? Carla sighed. I don't know what's gotten into him. That was totally unfair. You didn't do anything to deserve that. Maya shook her head, trying to make sense of it all. It's like he thinks I'm the problem just for wanting everyone to have the same rights. I was standing up for what's right. Carla nodded and hugged Maya. You're not alone, okay? Everyone in class saw how unfair he was. We're on your side. Maya took a deep breath, feeling a bit more secure. Thanks, Carla. I really needed to hear that. Here's the translation of your text into American English, maintaining the original meaning while ensuring it flows naturally for an American audience. Later that evening, when Maya got home, she sat on the sofa next to her father, Director Thompson, who immediately noticed the somber expression on his daughter's face. "Maya, did something happen at school?" he asked, his voice soft yet attentive. She hesitated, but she knew she couldn't keep it to herself any longer. "It was Professor Harris. He made some comments during class that were really harsh. He basically dismissed the civil rights movement and everything it stands for. And he even insinuated that I was wrong for believing in the importance of fighting for equality." Her father's face hardened as he listened to her words. "Did he say that directly to you?" Maya nodded, her eyes misty. "Yeah. He used my comment to start a discussion and ended up ridiculing me in front of everyone." Director Thompson sighed, clearly frustrated. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, sweetheart. No teacher has the right to treat a student like that, especially in an environment where you should feel safe." Maya looked at him, searching for comfort. "I don't know what to do, Dad. I just want to be able to speak up and be heard, without being judged." He hugged her tightly. "You have every right to be heard, Maya. And I will talk to Professor Harris about this. He needs to understand that his words have an impact, and that he must respect his students." Maya felt relieved, though still anxious about what would happen next. She knew her father was on her side and would do everything possible to protect her. The next day, Maya still carried the weight of what had happened. She woke up with a knot in her stomach, and even her father's support the night before didn't seem to ease the discomfort she felt. When she went down for breakfast, she found her father, Director Thompson, sitting at the table, his face serious and determined. "Did you sleep well, sweetheart?" he asked, trying to mask his concern. Maya shrugged as she grabbed an apple. "I tried, but I still feel bad about everything, Dad. I keep thinking about how I could have reacted better." "No, Maya," he gently interrupted, looking at her firmly. "You're not to blame. Professor Harris crossed a line. And that's why I'm going to talk to him today. This cannot stand." Maya sighed, feeling insecure. "What if he makes things worse after this? What if he thinks I went to complain? I don't want to be the student who causes trouble for teachers." Her father stepped closer, placing his hands on her shoulders, looking her in the eyes. "You're not causing any trouble. You're just demanding the respect you deserve. I want you to trust me, Maya. I'll handle this in a way that makes him understand that you deserve nothing less than the best treatment." She nodded, trying to believe his words. "Okay, Dad. I trust you." Later at school, Director Thompson headed to the office where he had scheduled a meeting with Professor Harris. Harris arrived a few minutes later, unaware of the meeting's purpose. He entered the room with a formal smile, but the director didn't seem interested in pleasantries. "Professor Harris," Thompson began, gesturing for him to take a seat. "We need to talk about what happened in history class yesterday." Harris adjusted himself in the chair, looking surprised. "Sure, about what exactly?" Thompson took a deep breath. "About the comments you made during class. My daughter, Maya, felt disrespected and humiliated by what you said regarding the civil rights movement." The professor appeared taken aback. "Oh, that wasn't my intention, Mr. Thompson. I was just trying to promote a debate, and maybe I expressed myself too directly." "Directly, yes," Thompson replied, his gaze steady. "But your words crossed the line from objective to offensive. You effectively dismissed an important part of American history and used Maya as a negative example. That is unacceptable." Harris shook his head, looking bewildered. "I didn't imagine she would take it that way. It was an academic debate, an opportunity to challenge them." "Challenging is one thing," Thompson said, maintaining a controlled but firm tone. "Humiliating is another. And we cannot allow students to feel that their opinions or identities are under attack, especially in a place where they should feel safe." Harris sat in silence, absorbing the words. He shifted in his seat, looking at the director, now visibly uncomfortable. Maybe I did cross the line. I didn't realize the impact of my words. That's a start, Harris, Thompson said, relaxing slightly. But I expect more than just reflection. Maya and all students deserve an environment where they can learn and discuss ideas with respect. I would like you to apologize to her, and to rethink how you conduct these discussions. The professor nodded slowly, finally understanding the depth of the situation. I will do that, Mr. Thompson. I didn't mean for it to come to this, and I owe her an apology. I hope so, Thompson said, standing up to end the meeting with a nod. Don't let this happen again. I'll be keeping an eye on it. After that conversation, Harris left the office with a thoughtful expression. He knew that an apology wouldn't erase what he had done, but he hoped it could be the first step toward making amends. The next morning, Maya arrived at school with a heavy heart, but determined. As she walked down the hallway, she noticed curious glances and whispers among her classmates. It felt as though everyone knew something important would happen that day, even though she herself wasn't sure what to expect. When she entered the history classroom, she found Professor Harris already at the front, quietly organizing some papers. He looked up, and for a moment, their eyes met. She noticed a hint of discomfort in his expression, but he quickly looked away. The students settled into their seats, and class began normally until, in the middle of his explanation, Harris stopped and looked at Maya with a serious expression. Maya, could you stay for a moment after class? I'd like to talk to you, he said, his voice slightly hesitant. The other students exchanged glances, and Maya nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and curiosity. After class ended and the other students left, Maya stayed seated, watching as Professor Harris approached. He seemed uneasy, his shoulders tense and his hands clasped in front of him. Maya, he began, taking a deep breath. I'd like to apologize for what I said in the last class. My words were insensitive. I know they hurt you, and that wasn't my intention. Maya stared at him in silence, surprised by the apology but still harboring resentment. It was more than insensitive, Professor. It was humiliating. Harris looked away, clearly uncomfortable. I understand. And, honestly, I regret exposing you like that. I should have been more careful, especially on such a sensitive topic. She crossed her arms, gathering the courage to speak. You know, discussing my people's history as if it were something lesser isn't just insensitive. It's disrespectful. And when you did that, it felt like you didn't care about what it meant to me, and to all the other students who identify with this struggle. Sure. Here's the translation of your text into American English. He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. I never thought of it that way, Maya. I guess, because I've lived such a different experience, I ended up failing to recognize how important certain issues are to you and other students. Maya relaxed a little, still not taking her eyes off him. I just want you to understand that this story isn't just part of a book for me. It's part of my life, part of my family's life, and of all those who came before me. Harris nodded, visibly moved. I promise I will reflect on what you said, Maya. From now on, I'll do my best to create a more respectful and welcoming environment in the classroom. She looked at him for a moment, considering his words. I hope so, Professor. Because no one should feel the way I felt. School should be a safe place for all of us. Harris took a deep breath, looking at her with a mix of regret and gratitude. Thank you for giving me the chance to hear this directly from you, Maya. I will do my best to change and ensure you feel respected in my classes. Maya nodded in silence, feeling a little lighter. Maybe this was a small step towards something better, not just for her but for all the other students who, like her, deserve to be heard and respected. She walked out of the room with her head held high, feeling that her voice had finally been heard. Over the weekend, David Harris couldn't stop thinking about the conversation he had with Maya. He recalled her expression, eyes heavy with hurt and indignation, the posture of someone expecting more than he had offered until that moment. The impact of her words, previously underestimated, now weighed on his conscience like a stone. On Sunday night, he picked up the phone and dialed Principal Thompson's number. His heart raced, and he hesitated before finally pressing the button to start the call. On the other end, the principal answered with his usual formal tone. "Good evening, Principal Thompson," David began, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'd like to discuss something important regarding the situation with Maya." "Good evening, Professor Harris," the principal replied. The tension in his voice was palpable. "I hope you've thought a lot about the impact of what happened." David took a deep breath, preparing to speak. "Yes, sir. I spent the weekend reflecting on what occurred and recognized that I was insensitive. I think, in my position, I was negligent in realizing how my words could be received by the students, especially by Maya." Principal Thompson remained silent for a moment before responding. "I understand, Professor Harris. But I want you to know that my daughter is just one example of how these attitudes affect young people who are seeking to feel valued and respected. You are her teacher, but you are also one of the leaders in this school. As such, I expect more responsibility from you." David swallowed hard. "I understand. I will do everything I can to make amends for what I caused, sir. I'd like to apologize publicly, perhaps at an assembly, and I'm also willing to participate in diversity training to learn more." The principal pondered, and David could hear the weight of his breath on the other side. "I believe that's a good start. But this is not just about an apology. It's about creating an environment of respect and empathy for all our students. I hope you're truly willing to do that, Professor Harris." "Yes, sir. I will do my utmost to improve and do whatever it takes," David affirmed, feeling a sense of responsibility settle in his chest. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to do the right thing. On Monday, David approached Maya before class began. "Maya, can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked, his voice gentler than usual. She looked at him warily but nodded. "I wanted to say again how sorry I am for what happened. And I know that words alone aren't enough. The principal and I are organizing an assembly to discuss these issues with all the students. I want you to know that I'll be there to listen and learn, and to apologize if you're willing to accept it." Maya studied him for a moment, trying to gauge his sincerity. "If you really want to change, then I will be there. Because this conversation isn't just about me, Professor. It's about all of us." David nodded, a look of gratitude on his face. "I know. And I will work to do better from now on. Thank you for giving me this chance." Maya offered a slight smile, a sign that perhaps things could improve. She knew there was still a long way to go, but for now, she felt that her voice had finally been heard. The next morning, Maya arrived at school with a mix of nerves and anticipation. The news about the incident with Professor Harris had already spread among her classmates, and now everyone was curious to see how it would unfold. During history class, students whispered quietly, watching every move the professor made. Once everyone was settled, Professor Harris approached Maya's desk and, with a serious and humble expression, asked to speak with her in the hallway. Maya looked at him with a firm expression and stood up, following him outside. Silence enveloped the students, who anxiously awaited her return. In the hallway, David looked at Maya with a heavy demeanor. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Maya, I know words aren't enough, but I want to start by saying how sorry I am for what happened," he began, his voice marked by sincerity. "I should never have spoken that way. What I said was insensitive and prejudiced." Maya regarded him, absorbing each word. She crossed her arms but remained silent, allowing him to continue. "I spent the weekend reflecting, and I realized I need to be better for all of you. Especially for you. I am ashamed of what I said and the impact it had," David continued, his gaze lowered. "I promise I'll do everything I can to change." Maya took a deep breath, controlling the emotion rising within her. "Professor Harris, do you understand how that made me feel? How I felt diminished and disrespected?" David nodded, his face tense. "I understand now, yes. And I'm sorry for not realizing it sooner. No one deserves to be treated that way, especially by someone who should be here to support them." Maya uncrossed her arms and relaxed a little, but she was still thoughtful. "What are you going to do to change, then? Because saying sorry is important, but things have to be different, really different." He nodded. "You're right. Tomorrow, we're having an assembly, and I want to apologize to everyone, not just you. I've also talked to the principal about bringing in a diversity and respect program for the school. I want to learn from this and help you all feel safe and respected here." Maya observed him closely, noticing the sincere tone in his voice. She finally nodded her head. "All right, Professor. I accept your apology. But I'll be watching to see if these changes actually happen." David offered a small but genuine smile. "That's all I ask. And, thank you for giving me this chance, Maya. I promise I'll do my best to earn it." She nodded, looking him in the eyes. "I hope so, Professor. I really hope so." As they returned to the classroom, Maya felt a slight sense of relief. She wasn't sure how much Professor Harris could really change, but at least now he seemed willing to try. The incident between Maya and Professor Harris had spread throughout the school and quickly beyond its walls. Students, parents, and teachers were discussing the case, and the conversation about prejudice in the school environment began to gain traction. The administration decided to hold an open assembly so everyone could share their opinions and experiences. On the morning of the assembly, the gym was filled with students, parents, and staff. Principal Thompson, Maya's father, stood at the front with a serious and determined expression. Maya felt the weight of the moment. The assembly wasn't just about her, but something much bigger. As the assembly began, the principal took the microphone. "Thank you all for being here today. We know that respect and inclusion are essential for everyone's well-being. Today, we will give voice to anyone who wants to share their experiences and concerns to build a more welcoming school environment." After a few minutes of silence, a senior named Carlos stood up. "I want to say that what happened to Maya isn't an isolated incident. Sometimes we feel that prejudice in subtle ways, through jokes or looks, and it affects all of us." Other students started to agree, and a murmur of support swept through the room. Maya watched intently, surprised to see how many people were willing to share their experiences. At one point, the mother of a classmate stood up and took the microphone. "As a mother, I've always worried about the environment my child is growing up in. I want him to be in a place where everyone is treated with respect. What happened here was a wake-up call. We need to do better for all of our children." After several testimonials, Mr. Harris stood up, drawing curious and attentive glances. He seemed tense but determined to speak. He walked to the microphone, looking at the audience, and took a deep breath. "I would like to publicly apologize for what happened," he began, his voice steady. "I recognize that what I said was wrong and that I hurt not only Maya but also the trusting environment that should exist in this school. My intention was never to humiliate or hurt anyone, but I failed to see the impact of my words." He cast a quick glance at Maya, who was watching him with an attentive yet calm expression. "Since then, I've been reflecting a lot on the role I need to play as a teacher and as a human being," Harris continued. "Starting today, I am committed to learning and understanding more about the challenges many of you face. I apologize, and I am willing to do whatever it takes to help transform our school into a fairer place." After a brief silence, someone started clapping, and soon the whole audience joined in. Maya felt a warmth in her chest. Mr. Harris seemed genuine in his words, and she finally believed he truly wanted to change. At the end of the assembly, Maya approached Carlos and the other friends who had supported her. "Thank you, guys. You have no idea how much it helped me when you spoke up today." Carlos smiled at her. "We're with you, Maya. This needed to happen. And who knows, it might make a difference for a lot of people. As the assembly concluded, Maya felt the school beginning to transform. She knew there was a long road ahead, but with the support of the community, she believed they could create a more welcoming space for everyone. The assembly had been a turning point for the school and the community. However, the atmosphere in Mr. Harris's classroom was still tense. He knew he needed to act quickly to restore his students' trust and, more importantly, to ensure that something like this wouldn't happen again. The next morning, as he walked into the classroom, Harris noticed many students huddled in groups, chatting animatedly, but the atmosphere was still one of uncertainty. He approached the whiteboard and took a deep breath, aware that he needed to expose himself even more. "Good morning, class," he said, trying to sound confident. "Today I want us to have an honest conversation. You all saw how the assembly helped us better understand what's going on. But this is just the beginning." Maya raised her hand. "Professor, do you really think we can change things here?" "Yes, Maya," he replied, looking directly into her eyes. "But this requires effort from all of us. One of the things we can do is create a diversity and inclusion program at the school. We need all of you on board for it to work." Another student, Jamal, spoke up. "How exactly is this going to work? What are you thinking?" "Great question, Jamal," said Harris, smiling. "I thought about organizing a student committee where you can share ideas and experiences, and also help plan activities that promote diversity. We can hold lectures, workshops, and even cultural events." The students began to glance at one another, some clearly excited. Maya raised her hand again. "And who will lead this? Is it just going to be you, or can we help?" Harris smiled, impressed by Maya's willingness to take part. "I would love for you to be co-leaders. This needs to be a collective effort. We all need to listen to each other and learn from one another." "I can help," shouted Samantha, one of Maya's classmates, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I've always wanted to see something like this happen here." "That would be amazing," said another student, Liam, smiling. "I think a lot of people would be willing to participate if you're leading it, Professor." Harris felt a wave of relief and hope wash over him. "So let's have a meeting this week to discuss all of this. I want each of you to bring ideas and suggestions. Our school is only as strong as the community that supports it." The bell for recess rang, and the students began to leave the classroom, but many stopped to greet Harris and express their support. He watched them with a smile, feeling that maybe, just maybe, change was truly underway. In the hallway, Maya found her dad. "Hi, Dad. The assembly was a success, and now Mr. Harris really wants to implement a diversity program. We're getting together to plan it." Principal Thompson smiled, proud of his daughter. "That's fantastic, Maya. I'm so happy you're getting involved. This is the way to build a better future. Are you willing to lead this?" "Yes, I really want to do this," she said, filled with determination. "I want everyone to feel like they have a voice and a place here." "I always knew you were special, my girl," he replied, pulling her into a hug. "You're going to make a difference, I'm sure of it." As the students dispersed down the hallway, a sense of optimism hung in the air. Harris and Maya were determined to make the school a place where diversity was celebrated and respect was the norm, not the exception. The journey was just beginning, but every step taken together was a step toward a better future. The classroom was full, and students murmured among themselves as David Harris prepared to speak. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. It was Assembly Day, where he would have the opportunity to redeem himself and share his learnings with the class. The light pouring in through the windows illuminated his face, but he felt a weight in his heart. Maya and her friends were in the front row, eager to hear what the teacher had to say. Maya turned to Samantha, her expression nervous. "Do you think he really learned his lesson?" "I hope so. He needs to show that he's willing to change," Samantha replied, biting her lip. David took a deep breath and addressed the class. "Good morning, everyone," he began, trying to project confidence. "Today, I want to talk about something very important. Not just about me, but about all of us and what happened last week." The murmurs in the room quieted, and all eyes turned to him. "At the last assembly, I realized how my words can have an impact and how ignorance can cause pain. I made a mistake that hurt not only one student but all of you. And as a teacher, I should have been a model of respect and understanding." Maya watched closely as he continued. "When I made that comment about African American culture, I didn't realize I was perpetuating a harmful stereotype. I was insensitive, and as a result, I hurt one of you. To be honest, I'm ashamed of that." He paused, looking at the class with sincerity. "I want you all to know that I'm here to learn and grow. From today on, I promise to make an effort to be an ally in the fight against prejudice and discrimination. I want to use my role as a teacher to educate and promote diversity in our school." Jamal, sitting in the back, raised his hand. "Professor, are you going to do something concrete about this? Like, how can we be sure that things will really change?" "Great question, Jamal," Harris responded, appreciating the students' courage. "I plan to implement a new curriculum that includes a diversity of voices and perspectives. I will invite speakers, hold workshops, and create a safe space where everyone can express themselves. And of course, I want to hear your suggestions." Maya raised her hand, her heart racing. "Professor, what about the committee we're forming? Can we use that as a platform to discuss racial issues and create more activities that promote inclusion?" "Yes, definitely. That committee will be crucial," Harris said, his eyes lighting up. "I want you to feel in control of this process. You are the future generation, and your voices are essential." The students began murmuring, some smiling and nodding. Harris felt a wave of hope wash over him. He had made a mistake, but now he had the chance to correct his path. "I also want to personally apologize to you, Maya," Harris continued, his voice soft. "Please know that this isn't just about you, it's about what all of us can learn from this. I hope we can work together to create an environment where everyone feels respected and valued." Maya felt a mix of emotions. What had once been pain was now transforming into a sense of hope. "Thank you, Professor. I just want everyone in the school to feel comfortable being who they are." The assembly ended with warm applause, and the students stood up, chatting excitedly about the changes that were coming. Harris watched as the room emptied, feeling a renewed sense of purpose in his work. In the hallway, Maya and her friends hugged each other, laughing and discussing the ideas they already had in mind for the committee. "I can't believe this is really happening," Maya said, her heart racing with excitement. "We're finally making a difference." "It's just the beginning," Samantha replied, her eyes shining. "We'll make sure everyone in the school knows they matter." Maya smiled, feeling the strength of her peers beside her. They were ready to face the future together, and the school was about to become a more inclusive and welcoming place where everyone's voices would be heard and respected. Change was possible, and they were ready to lead that transformation. The sunny day brought renewed energy to Maya's school. The students were excited about the changes ahead, and the atmosphere in the hallway was vibrant. Posters adorned the walls, announcing the first meeting of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, scheduled for that afternoon. Now more confident, Maya walked through the halls, feeling part of something bigger. "Hey, Maya." Jamal called, running to catch up with her. "I was thinking about our idea to bring in a speaker for the meeting. Do you remember Professor Johnson? He's amazing and has a lot of experience with diversity issues." "Great idea, Jamal." Maya replied, smiling. "I think he could offer us valuable insight. Let's reach out to him and see if he can join us." Meanwhile, David Harris observed the students bustling about from his office. He felt nervous but excited at the same time. The school was finally moving in the right direction, and he was determined to be an active part of this process. Principal Thompson entered the room, a satisfied smile on his face. "I'm proud of you, David," the principal said. "Seeing the students so engaged and ready to change the school culture is inspiring." "Thank you, Thompson. I really want to make a difference," Harris replied, looking out the window. "Their experiences are so important, and I hope we can create an environment where everyone feels safe to express themselves." Later, the classroom filled with the contagious energy of students gathering for the first committee session. Maya and Jamal led the discussion, aware of the responsibility they held. "Thank you all for being here," Maya began, her voice steady. "We're here because we want to ensure that each of us feels respected and valued. The experiences each of you brings are valid and need to be heard." Samantha raised her hand. "I thought it would be cool to organize a Diversity Awareness Week. We could have talks, workshops, and even a culture day where everyone can share their traditions." "I love that," Maya exclaimed, feeling excited. "We could invite families to bring traditional foods and share their stories. That'll help bring us all together." Harris, who had been listening closely, interjected, "Those are excellent ideas. I can also help connect you with some speakers who can provide more insights and experiences." Hearing this, Jamal turned to Harris. "Professor, I have a question. How can we ensure that this change isn't just a phase, but something lasting in our school?" "That's a very important question, Jamal," Harris said, thinking for a moment. "The key is continuity. We need to create a space where students can consistently bring their concerns and ideas. This should become part of our school culture." "Absolutely. And we need everyone to get involved, not just those on the committee," Maya added. "If the change is going to stick, everyone needs to feel responsible for it." As the meeting progressed, the energy in the room was palpable. The students' voices intertwined in a chorus of hope and determination. They were ready to unite and build an environment where everyone felt safe and respected. At the end of the meeting, Maya and her friends sat in a corner of the room, smiling at a future filled with promise. "We can really make a difference, can't we?" Samantha said, her eyes shining with excitement. "Yes, and this is just the beginning," Maya replied, looking around at the faces surrounding her. "We're just starting to make our voices heard. I want everyone to know that their stories matter and that we're here to make sure they're heard." The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the school as the students left the room, animatedly discussing their next steps. Maya felt stronger than ever, knowing that every small step they took was a step toward a more inclusive future. David Harris watched the students leave, feeling optimistic. He had learned so much from this experience and was committed to being an advocate for diversity. He smiled to himself, knowing he was on a path of growth and change, not just for himself but for the entire school. It was a new beginning, an echo of hope resonating in every corner, where every voice told a story, and every story contributed to a better future.